Shia LaBeouf, the child actor turned adult actor, has had a very public relationship with substance abuse and with violence for years. From egregious allegations of intimate partner violence to multiple arrests over putting his hands on strangers while under the influence, Shia has a lengthy history of misconduct.
Singer-songwriter FKA Twigs is speaking out to us in her first TV interview since filing a lawsuit against her former boyfriend, that's actor Shia LaBeouf. She says that their relationship was filled with verbal, emotional, and physical abuse. In December, she filed a civil suit against him, accusing him of sexual battery, assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress.
But more recently, in New Orleans at Mardi Gras, Shia was again arrested for battery. An incident during which it's reported he used homophobic slurs. And as soon as he was let out on bail, Shia went straight back to the French Quarter to keep partying. A few days later, he met with interviewer Andrew Callahan to talk about life recently. Well, I watched the whole interview and I thought that it was actually very rich in insights and questions about sobriety, mania, and ultimately accountability. Specifically, what does it look like when somebody keeps repeating that they take full accountability, but in the very next sentence, they contradict themselves? The first thing you need to understand about Shia LaBeouf is that he is a highly charismatic individual. He loves connecting with people and he's good at it.
So I like connecting with people. I'm desperate to connect with people. And I love Mardi Gras. And I love New Orleans. What do you do with that?
As he himself pointed out in the interview, the interactions that he had at Mardi Gras that turned ugly were a small minority of the wonderful interactions he had with people at Mardi Gras. He seems like someone capable of being very warm and present and recognizing that other people could be having a bad day and wanting to just give a little bit of a boost to their life when possible.
I take pictures of people because that shit help their day. Maybe motherfuckers like, hey man, can't make my tax season. Hey, my fucking mom's diabetic. But who knows? Bro, you don't know what people's problems are, you know? Just crashed my car. I was jogging the other day. Dude couldn't believe I was in the street, which I was flattered by, but then he fucking crashed his car into a pole. And I thought, oh my God, bro. You know? Yeah. How do you help that guy?
But the problem is just because someone is charismatic doesn't mean they can't also be dangerous. I don't think the average person really understands this about abuse. When they hear that someone is abusive, they sort of visualize this like villain, this all bad person. And so then when they meet someone who they're told is abusive, and that person is wonderful to them, they think, oh, that must not have been true what I heard. When the truth is, people can be both. They can be both wonderful and charismatic at some times and turn very dangerous when something hits on a core wound of theirs. Abusive people aren't abusive all the time. In fact, in many cases, abusive people get away with their abuse for so long because they're wonderful when they're not being abusive. So it can be kind of dangerous to have this vision in our heads of abusers as these all bad entities. We need to see them for their multifaceted selves, which doesn't mean excusing their worst behavior through who they are at their best. And I think Shia's charisma is a lot of the reason why people give him such a pass for the violent things that he's done. Because then he does these interviews where he comes off looking really self-reflective and personable. And honestly, people are a lot more willing to let things slide if they feel that somebody is self-aware. Because I would say for the majority of people who cause disruptions in our lives, they lack that self-awareness. You know, we try to communicate, this is how your behavior has impacted me and harmed me and yada, yada, yada. And there's often this like inability to absorb any of that information. And so when you see somebody like Shia LaBeouf, who seems to take responsibility and seems to be highly charismatic and self-aware, a lot of people are willing to excuse some of the things he's done because they feel like, well, look, he's reflected on it so much, he's clearly going to change in the future. And on the surface in this interview, it seems like Shia has remorse and self-awareness, that he takes full responsibility for his behavior.
You know, I got some contrition on my heart, you know what I mean? It's not nice to hurt people, ever. It's fucking lame. People got hurt, I gotta deal with that. I'm gonna deal with that. I'm gonna deal with that in full. I'll eat it all. It's on me. It's not on them. It's on me. I fucked up. It's on me. I fucked up. It's on me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you take responsibility for
1000%. We're not gonna play games.
Yeah.
But I had a great time.
Definitely.
But pretty immediately after he says he owns up, he takes full accountability, he's going to make it right, we get little slips of a different narrative.
So I moved out here and started trying to rebuild, was having a good time, and then, hit a roadblock right there.
And where do you think that roadblock began?
I think that roadblock began with clout chasing.
In what sense?
I'm a bright light, G. So I come out here, I'm out here. And that's sexy. You know what I mean? So I think, but it's not we're going to get to it. I don't want to know, but that's not to diminish on that side either. I fucked up, you know what I mean? But.
You mean like cloud chasing is what led to you having an altercation? Pretty much.
Yeah.
Can you break down like what happened that led up to that fight?
I was drunk and then I felt infringed upon. Yeah, like in terms of my proximity, but I wasn't in my right mind. And so it's on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he starts to say the roadblock began with clout chasing, he never quite finishes his sentence. But it seems like the direction he might be going in is that he was arrested because the people he ended up beating up were clout chasing somehow. But notice how he immediately catches himself diminishing how he fucked up. And even as he catches himself doing that, he can't help but say, I felt infringed upon.
I guess, what about this particular infringement on your privacy?
I'm a Catholic, bro. You know what I mean? I don't fuck with the... God, be careful. Help me now. I'm a Catholic.
What does that have to do with like you feel like, how does that connect to the...
I don't know. The whole story's not out yet. I don't know what was going on in my head, but it don't matter. I mean, the truth is, I said words not okay to say. I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. That's what I mean by being, I'm a Catholic. I'm not supposed to be out here, I'm wrong for what I did, is what I'm saying.
Shia seems to temporarily lose his temper, and then he starts to say something, but he sort of catches himself mid-sentence. It almost seems like there's something he believes about the cause of his violent outburst that he's not quite saying. And he goes right back to, I was wrong for what I did. But what is it that he's trying to stop himself from saying? Pretty soon afterwards, he starts taking responsibility again.
It was no good, bro. My behavior's dirty, ugly, disgusting, so I gotta eat it,
But then later on in the interview, he catches himself saying that he's not hurting anybody by getting drunk. And again, he immediately catches himself and he remembers that he did in fact recently hurt people.
None of that. I just go out and I go listen to music. It feels good right now. And I'm not hurting nobody. There's 2-3 people I hurt, I'm gonna deal with that. God bless you guys. That's my fault. I'm gonna deal with you. On me. But that's the amount of interactions I've had in Mardi Gras. Bro, I must have met 20,000 people.
Listen to what he says next. I'm not a fighter, bro. These are just clout chasers.
You're going to jail for fighting when you're out drinking. Is that not a wake-up call of like, damn, dude, like...
Nah, because it wasn't bro, I'm not a fighter, bro. These people are clout chasers.
Again, we get a glimpse into maybe what he really thinks about what happened, which really makes me wonder, what is it with all that it's on me, it's all me, I take 100% responsibility that he was saying before? Was that just a rehearsed script? Regardless, we learned something interesting from this slip from Shia. Despite the fact that he has a pattern of violence against people spanning decades, he doesn't see himself as a fighter. It's possible he doesn't really think that the cause of all these outbursts was himself. It's possible that he blames the person he put his hands on. At one point, I got the impression that Shia was starting to catch on to something very important. The reality that this isn't necessarily about substance abuse, but rather something else. When he was asked about FK Twigs, he said the following.
Looking back at that whole chapter, as far as the major controversy and everything like that, 2 or 3 years ago, how do you look back in the review?
Twigs and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bro, she's a good girl, bro. That's a good girl.
But listen really carefully to what he says immediately afterwards. Listen to what he starts to say, but catches himself and stops.
The issue with me and her had to do with jealousy and bullshit, manipulation, and some stuff she talked about and some stuff that, you know what I mean.
Some stuff she said was true, and some stuff, what? To an outsider, it kind of sounds like he's heading in the direction of there were some stuff that went down that she didn't talk about, which I'm sure is true. That's always the case when we only have one side of the story. But it reveals a lot about the way he might be thinking about the conflict between the two of them. Remember, Shia was accused of horrific abuse. What does it say if somebody who perpetrated that horrific abuse sort of catches themselves slipping about how their victim's statement was not telling the whole story? Hypothetically, it could mean that they partly blame the victim for what happened. But then again, he immediately catches himself and goes back to his speech about how that's a good girl right there.
But that's my fault too right there, you know what I mean? That's on me too. It's not on her, that's on me. That's a good girl. She's a fucking incredible artist, bro. Pay attention to her work, she's amazing.
When you say it's on you, like,
Whatever she said, run with most of it.
But then again, whatever she said, run with most of it. I guess I'm just kind of curious, what didn't she say that would bring more context to the fact that he chose to put his hands on her? So Steven asks Shia if he and FKA Twigs were able to work out things behind closed doors, and Shia makes some hand movements that suggest it comes down to money?
Were you able to work some of that stuff out behind closed doors?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does Shia think that FKA Twigs went public with her allegations against him because she wanted financial compensation? Is that what he's not saying? Steven follows up by asking Shia how he sees accountability, and Shia actually has a pretty good answer.
You took responsibility for it.
Yeah.
So it's like when you mess up, when you're drunk and you do something wrong, you hurt somebody, what is the path to restitution? Is it like living, you know, in the proper way to minimize that in the future? Or is it like taking actionable steps behind closed doors to like rectify that shit?
Mm-hmm. You got to make amends. First thing you got to do is you got to say what you did. Then you got to say how it's never going to happen again. And then you got to show and prove.
But I have to wonder, did he actually take accountability if accountability means no longer putting his hands on someone else, and then he went and put his hands on someone else? Steven asks him about the Mardi Gras situation specifically, and listen very carefully to what Shia responds.
Love everywhere. I don't get love. I get love pretty much everywhere. The minute I get into trouble is with a person who is after something.
After what kind of thing? Like inciting a reaction?
I am an opportunity sometimes to someone. That's not to minimize my behavior, but I get it. I'm bright as fuck when I walk around, and I get, listen, if you're like a Twigs fan or something like, I don't know, bro. I have no fucking idea, bro. It's not my business. It's not my business. Here's what I know. I can only deal with my side. My side is this. My behavior, bullshit. I gotta deal with that.
I am an opportunity sometimes seems to be suggesting that he was maybe provoked into violence. And that is a very frequent way that abusers think about their abuse. Even if on the surface they promise to never do it again, to take full accountability, a lot of them deep down truly believe that their victim somehow provoked them and somehow deserved their violence. Next, Shia starts talking about how he doesn't think his answers are in rehab. He doesn't have a drinking problem. He has what he calls a small man complex.
Does that mean I gotta go to rehab again? I'm just not into it, bro. I don't think my answers are there. I don't. I genuinely don't. If I genuinely did, I'd go. I don't think I have a drinking problem. I think I have a different problem, and I'm gonna address it.
And what's that problem?
I think I have a small man complex. Some kind of Napoleonic, I don't know what it is. I think it's something that has to do with anger and ego more so than my drinking.
And I gotta say, I take an issue with the way that the media has taken his I don't have a drinking problem out of context, because I completely agree with him. A small man complex has the same root cause as insecurity. Regardless of height or gender, anyone can have a small man complex. If you feel like you are small inside, and an attack on your ego feels unbearable, and you react with rage and impulsivity and entitlement to take that rage out onto the person who provoked your feelings of smallness, that's a small man complex. That is at the core what abuse is about. Not substance abuse, not anything else. Substances only bring to the surface what already exists under the surface. I know that that's a tough pill to swallow for people who have maybe done things under the influence that they're not proud of, but that was still them. You know, like a person that's not, for instance, sexually violent, it doesn't matter what they take, they're never going to be sexually violent under the influence. And then Shia starts to talk about how big gay people are scary to him.
What kind of things set off that anger?
What kind of things set off that anger? I mean, boy, I haven't experienced it for a while, but I'll be honest with you, big gay people are scary to me.
What do you mean?
When I'm like standing by myself and 3 gay dudes are next to me touching my leg, I get scared. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. If that's homophobic, then I'm that.
Yeah. Does that happen a lot?
No, it just happened one time.
Recently?
Well, that's why I got arrested.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And this one I feel is kind of complex because on the surface, obviously it sounds homophobic to say that you're scared of gay people. But what he's actually describing, being encircled and fondled by several gay men, that's not actually homophobia. That's feeling violated. And if that's what happened, then his own right to not be touched against his consent was being violated in that moment. Of course, it's also possible that someone who is scared of gay people might perceive a gay person as making a move on them because they already feel threatened. It might be related to that small man complex that he was talking about. It's also possible for someone with a history of sexual abuse that makes them sort of hypervigilant to possible threats of being violated, to be scared of gay men in particular, because statistically speaking, men are the ones who are most likely to commit sexual violence. And it's also possible for someone to sort of project their own sexual aggression onto someone else. It wouldn't be unheard of for someone with a history of intimate partner violence and sexual violence to see gay men as threatening because they see in other people what exists within themselves. And for once, they're not the stronger man overpowering a physically weaker woman. For once, they are the one in the vulnerable position. Listen, I honestly have no idea what happened between Shia and those men that he was arrested for beating up. I have no idea which, if any, of the theories I just proposed apply to him. So Stephen tries to clarify, was he being groped and surrounded? Is that why he lashed out?
So you were sort of being groped and surrounded.
I'm not going to say that because my lawyer said, oh, fuck, dude.
It's okay. We can back up.
I am wrong for touching anyone ever. And that's the end of my statement on this whole shit.
Sounds good.
Cool.
And Shia's response is curious to me, because if he was being sexually violated, why would his lawyer not go with that as the defense? Hitting someone for putting their hands on you in an unwanted way could be considered self-defense, no? Or reactive abuse, as some people call it. The only reason I can really think of why his lawyer wouldn't want him to say he was being sexually violated is if he wants Shia to present this I take full responsibility front because Shia wasn't being fondled. But I'm not a lawyer, so if any of you guys have legal insights into this, please let me know what I'm missing here. What other reason would his lawyer have to not want him to say he was being touched against his consent? Why would Shia start to say this and then sort of correct himself? In the following few minutes, Shia starts to contradict himself pretty heavily on whether or not he supports gay people.
You know, I'm good with gay. Be gay over there, though. Don't be gay in my lap. I've never had no problem with gay people. Never. I remember paying for people's like transition surgery when I was fucking around on the internet heavy. I've never been adversarial towards it, you know what I mean? But I know I'm fucking deep off into the Bible. I know what the Bible says.
About
homosexuality.
What does it say?
Nah.
That's what it says?
Yeah.
But wasn't that written a really long time ago?
Bro, you can do whatever you want with the text. It's not my business. You know what I mean? I'm a traditional Catholic. That's okay.
And what's the difference between a traditional Catholic and, let's say, a more progressive Christian?
I really fuck with the Bible.
So in some sentences, he claims to support gay people, and then in the next sentence, he says it's against his religion to be gay. Either there's some sort of cognitive dissonance going on here where he doesn't realize the contradiction that he's saying, I think gay people are fine, but also being gay is immoral, or he isn't being completely honest with us about what he really believes deep down. Later in the interview, Shia reveals something really interesting. He thinks the fighting might just be a Mardi Gras thing.
You know, just figuring out what makes you upset, like what situations trigger.
Well, that's kind of, I gotta look into that for sure. But to be honest with you, bro, I think it's just Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras over, bro.
I know, but nobody's getting in fights after Mardi Gras.
You can always get into a fight in
I
New
swear.
Orleans.
I haven't been, I don't experience that out here.
Which doesn't at all explain his history of violence spanning decades in intimate relationships. And to me, it just kind of feels like one of those revelations that deep down, he doesn't actually think that the root of his violence is himself. But to me, perhaps the most interesting part of this interview was this concept that he talked about related to mania and bacchanalia. Throughout the interview, Shia keeps coming back to this concept of joy, but not just regular joy, an almost sacred type of joy.
I had a great time.
Definitely. Just like partying and Mardi Gras in general.
Nah, more than that. Something further than that. Something like sacred, bro. Something like, joy is sacred, bro. Which is not just joy. I know program dudes that experience the joy I'm talking about. I remember how it first came in. There's a different kind of joy I'm talking about. I'm talking about a different kind of unhinged, maniacal joy. I'm not talking about giggles. Like I'm talking about freedom. I'm talking about complete something like a existential, something further than just like some giggle, like the normie joy.
Like flying on the highway.
Like what? Yeah.
On a motorcycle.
No, further.
Okay.
Further than that. I'm further than that. is what Mardi Gras is.
He touches on a concept that various religions have recognized all over the world from an ancient time, the notion of balancing deprivation with debauchery. So in modern Christianity, Mardi Gras happens around Fat Tuesday, which precedes the period of pre-Easter Lent. Lent is obviously when Christians sort of deprive themselves of certain foods that they eat, and so immediately before that, they have this sort of feast party celebration. And places all over the world, including New Orleans Mardi Gras, but also Italy's Carnevale, Spain's Carnaval, Brazil's Carnaval, give people sort of one last hurrah to let loose before Lent, to drink heavily, to eat well, before sort of going into this period of self-inflicted hunger for what gives them the most joy. But this is nothing new. In ancient Greece and Rome, there were often such festivals giving people a chance to sort of let loose before a period of quieter scarcity. For example, Saturnalia, which is one of those holidays that sort of preceded Christmas at the winter solstice. During the darkest, coldest time of the year was a chance for games and gift-giving and feasting and drinking. In February, there were also festivals such as Anthesteria and Lupercalia. Throughout the year, there were also Bacchanalias, which are rituals in which particularly women would honor the god Dionysus in Greece or Bacchus in Rome, and they would honor him through things like dancing, transcendent states of consciousness like drunkenness, and just basically pure freedom, pure unabashed freedom.
What is it about Mardi Gras in New Orleans that you love?
It's existential. It's almost spiritual. If you're in the position I'm in as a Cajun man who's been exiled from his family, who has blood in the soil, who's fully connected to this place and have never really explored it, who's been on a fucking leash for a long time, who is a wild man at heart. You wind up in Mardi Gras, it becomes a spiritual experience. Bro, it's sacred. It's sacred. I knew some Lakotas deeply. I had spent some time in North Dakota for a long time. There was a girl I knew who was the daughter of Chief Red Cloud, who really ran shit. And he brought us in. We were doing a movie called American Honey. All right, we're selling magazines and stuff like that. We're at this reservation. We're fucking around at this reservation. And they basically took us in. And when we were there with them, you know, they kind of like were explaining drunkenness to us and like, spirit, you know, like I never got to go to Sundance. No white man can. But like when they go to Sundance, it's complete sobriety. I think it's like 60 days before, 60 days in. I'm getting the timings wrong. Forgive me. Complete sobriety. But they also have another season where something like a quinceañera, and I don't know if it's at 15 or 16, but there's a period of life where they encourage drunkenness. Jews also do the same thing.
The Amish also have rum spring.
Amish do the same thing. Germans do the same thing. I get that I'm the wrong guy to proselytize this shit.
No, but I get what you're saying.
But yeah, we're not alone in this. Mardi Gras is not the only one, you know? It's just the American one.
In all of these festivals, there seem to be a few common themes. One being this sort of inversion and lifting of taboos. For a period of a few days, the world turns upside down on itself. The order of the world is inverted, with taboos briefly being permitted. Like in Saturnalia, the masters would feed the slaves for a change. Carnevale is a period in which people to this day are allowed to mock authority, which is why you see floats like floats of Trump and Putin depicted as beasts. Gender swapping was also allowed during Carnevale, meaning like cross-dressing. Servants treating their masters as their equal. Another component of these festivals is often liminality. Liminality is when something is neither one thing nor another. It's sort of this betwixt and between, kind of like a crossroads, which is neither one street nor the other. So in a transcendent state of consciousness, like being highly drunk, you could sort of say that you're neither in this world nor the spiritual world. You kind of have your foot in each one. Another aspect of liminality of these festivals is that they often take place at the transition between seasons. So in this case, at the transition between winter and spring. But there's also a theme to these festivals that Shia seems to miss, which is the notion that these periods of debauchery and transcendent consciousness must be time limited. Eventually they must stop, because usually these festivals do and did take place after a period of winter scarcity or before a period of fasting from things that we most desire. The ancients intuitively understood that everything in the universe must be balanced. If you experience a period of letting loose, you must also experience a period of strict self-discipline to balance it out. It's why, for example, most plants go through a period of blooming and then a period of withering. If they're only blooming and growing nonstop, they'd eventually become monstrous. Just the same, we humans cannot constantly experience only elevated states of consciousness and celebration all the time, or we too will start to become monstrous. But this is the part that Shia, in his relapsed mind, doesn't quite seem to grasp. When he was released from jail, instead of collecting himself and retreating into strict self-discipline, he went right back out to party. And when he describes the state of pure, sacred joy, it makes me think also of the defense mechanism called mania. Now look, I don't know if Shia has ever been diagnosed with bipolar disorder or if this is just how he presents when he's heavily under the influence, but when I was watching this interview, the word that kept coming to mind for me was manic. That's what he was presenting as. He would sort of glide from one topic to another, one word association to another. He would forget how to say certain things and then seem to get lost in his own mind. He would repeat himself a lot. He would get distracted and swerve mid-sentence, like about a ladybug he saw. He would say something really ironic and not seem to realize it.
Like it got quite intimate, actually. Fuck was his name? I don't remember.
I first heard about the defense called mania when I was in grad school in psychoanalytic class. I remember my professor at the time, she was describing something called this like manic personality, which she said is a person who needs to constantly sort of fill their lives and be super productive and like never have a spare moment to rest because they're trying to defend against some feeling that they get when they're alone and just resting. And when I heard that, I felt so incredibly called out. And I was like, yeah, I think I know what that feels like. And then later when I myself was in psychoanalytic therapy, that's something that me and my therapist talked about. She explained to me that you don't have to be bipolar to experience the defense of mania. But here's the thing you have to understand about mania. It is an overcompensation for depression. We are trying to protect against feelings of depression or emptiness or worthlessness or whatever it is through its polar opposite, which is this like manic productivity or joy or celebration. It could kind of depend on the situation. And that's also why when somebody is actually bipolar, they don't just experience mania all the time. What happens after mania is they usually crash into a deep depression. One way of thinking about why they're experiencing that mania, sort of putting aside the sort of neurochemical components of it, is that their mind is creating the state of elevated consciousness to defend against deep, dark depression. So when you constantly need to be doing things because otherwise you feel worthless if you're not productive, when you constantly need to be playing YouTube videos or Netflix in the background of running errands because otherwise you're scared to be alone with your thoughts, when you're high on mania, either because of a substance or because of your own brain or because of this more like socially acceptable go, go, go attitude, you are defending against a crash of depression. You are trying to erase your own depression through its polar opposite of ecstasy. And in a lot of situations, people try to induce that ecstasy through substance abuse, sometimes through literal ecstasy. And this is why trying to treat substance abuse independently of the emotional experience driving it is really pointless. Recovery will not last long if you just treat substance abuse as like something completely separate from what is driving it. Most people, sort of putting aside the like physiological dependence that they can start to form to a substance, they keep using that substance because there's something they're trying to run away from. Either they don't know how to sit with their own painful feelings, so they try to numb or self-medicate those feelings, or maybe they struggle with impulsivity, so they just reach for the nearest distraction, meaning substance they can find. Or like Shia himself, maybe they watched adults in their life struggle with substance abuse when they were growing up, so they're just kind of replicating what was modeled to them. There was this norm growing up that this is how we deal with painful feelings, by drowning them out in liquor. So when Shia says that thinking about himself makes him unhappy, of course it does. Because if you're thinking about what is underneath your mania, you are getting in touch with the depression beneath it.
I don't know if I'm drinking that to be cool on your Channel 5 fucking cool fucking let's get it type of shit, or if I'm drinking that because I like want something to drink right now, or if I want to be drunk. I don't know why I'm drinking that right now. I can't tell you why. And the truth is, I'm so fucking I don't give a fuck no more. I'm just like, I'm just done with the self-analytical shit. It doesn't bring happiness.
In terms of deep introspection about
Bro,
why.
every time I think about me, I'm unhappy.
Like thinking about yourself?
I think it's true all around. I think it's just true. Every time a person thinks about themselves, they're unhappy.
Of course, we're going to be unhappy uncovering what's behind our substance abuse. That's the only way to figure out the core root of it and stop reaching for the substance. But after the high always comes the come down. The come down of a drug is interestingly always the opposite of its intoxicating effects. So alcohol, which is a depressant, meaning it like depresses your nervous system, after it's worn off during the hangover, say, it has the opposite effect on you. So you might experience, for example, anxiety or elevated heart rate. Uppers, in comparison, when you crash, can sometimes give you like a low come down. It's just the same as how the come down of mania is always depression. Life is always trying to balance itself out. If it goes too far in this way, it's going to swing back down equally as hard. So while it might feel great in the moment to be in this sort of manic state, it's not going to last forever. And the longer you delay the crash, the harder it's going to be when it finally does come. So Shia starts to talk about how kava was sort of a gateway drug for him that got him back into drinking. And he talks also about a common issue with AA, which is this debate that we have even, in the field of psychology. Which is better, strict sobriety versus harm reduction, which is when you sort of accept that, listen, people are going to have relapses, that's only normal, let's not catastrophize it. A huge problem with AA is its Christian overtones. Now, Shia being someone who very strongly identifies as Catholic, the Christian overtones of AA don't seem to be a huge issue for him. But strongly pushing someone down a certain religious path when they're in recovery can definitely be a problem for a number of reasons. First of all, some would argue that it's exploitative to push a religion on someone when they're down bad, when they're vulnerable and desperate for help. I remember when I was down bad with my ED, there was somebody in my life who was pretty strongly pushing Christianity onto me. And even in the moment, even though I was, in a really vulnerable, exposed state, I could recognize that it was wrong and that it felt exploitative. Another issue with it is that sometimes religion can feel to people in recovery like a way of relinquishing responsibility. It also shows up in the way that AA treats substance abuse problems like they're a disease and one that you have to live with forever, which kind of makes it seem like something is happening to you rather than it being something that you're choosing to engage in. And Christianity often has a very severe abstinence-only stance on, many things. And that all or nothing thinking can be really counterproductive to addicts who are already prone to that sort of outlook. This sort of like, well, fuck it then. If I can't be 100% sober, then let me just go wild attitude. Shia mentions he doesn't know what the solution is, but he feels he's not going to find it in AA. And I just want to say, if you've ever been in his position, please know that there are other treatment modalities for substance abuse. Harm reduction, like I said, recognizes that relapse is a very frequent part of recovery and it doesn't catastrophize it. It doesn't treat it as this like all or nothing day where one day you have a chip and one day you don't. DBT tries to balance abstinence with harm reduction and also reduces the black and white thinking that is so often a part of not only addict thinking, but also AA recovery spaces. And there are also other methods that don't view substance abuse as a permanent disease, but rather something that you can fully recover from. And one day look back on and think, damn, I can't believe I couldn't go a single day without using. These days, I almost never deal with those urges, which is kind of a similar debate also within ED spaces. There's often this question of like, are you always going to be someone that suffers with body dysmorphia and like the urge to restrict, for example, or is it one day just not going to be an issue for you? I'm living proof that in some situations, it's really not a permanent disease. Like, I definitely have days where I experience body dysmorphia still, where I don't like the way that I look, but I've been able to find like such a moderate, healthy relationship with food and exercise that like the urge to do anything unhealthy to my body, I haven't experienced in like 3-4 years. I don't know how long it is at this point. And listen, just like how some people are able to, for example, overcome an eating disorder and maybe lose weight for health reasons, some people are able to overcome their substance abuse problems and still find a relationship with substances that has moderation. Like maybe they used to do really heavy drugs and now they just will have a drink with dinner every now and then. Or they used to abuse alcohol and now they'll just have like a THC edible on special occasions. Harm reduction is definitely possible for some people. Moderation is definitely possible for some people. I'm wary of making a statement that it's possible for everybody who struggles with addiction because in some situations I truly think think a person might be better off never touching a substance again. And I suspect Shia might be in that camp of people. Now, towards the end, Shia and Andrew are talking about how the quickest way to find God is to live a life of strict deprivation, something akin to what you might find in a monastery or a prison. And this is really interesting to me because remember we talked earlier about the idea of like finding divinity and sacredness in these like elevated transcendental states of consciousness. And now we're talking about finding that also in asceticism, in this like strict, severe self-deprivation. Maybe asceticism is in itself a form of transcendence too. Or maybe divinity is just what we see sort of on the outskirts of human experience, on the very extremes of it. And maybe the middle of the road sort of moderation approach is where the mundane, the human, the non-divine exists. Maybe it's where we spend most of our lives. Maybe it's where we should spend most of our lives. So in summary, I found this interview to be really fascinating. It showed a lot about how sometimes people will say something and then in the next sentence reveal these little glimmers that maybe they don't fully believe that. That makes me wonder, is there like cognitive dissonance within them, or are they just saying what people want to hear? It also reveals a lot about these really ancient rituals and festivities that we have as human beings, and this like universal need to balance one extreme with its polar opposite. It revealed a lot about some of the drawbacks of AA approaches to recovery and how there are other approaches that maybe don't take such a black and white, ascetic, heavily Christian approach to it. But really, if I'm being honest with you, the thing that I found most fascinating about this interview was the public's reaction to it. Because Shia LaBeouf has been accused of and admitted to doing such horribly violent things. And yet the public still seems to really love him and almost like infantilize him in some points and say like, you all just need to leave this man alone. It's like this man is almost 40 years old. He is a grown man. He is an adult who has caused serious tangible harm to multiple victims. Why are we going so much harder on like female public figures that have done not even a fraction of the fucking shit this man has done? Not even a fraction. I mean, people are out here like treating Blake Lively and Taylor Swift like some sort of war criminals while they are saying, I love this man, he must be protected at all costs. Give me a break. I agree that Shia LaBeouf seems like a very likable person, but if he wants to talk about accountability, I would argue accountability is not saying the right things, but making sure to not do it again, which I guess we're just gonna have to see in time how that pans out. What did you think of this interview? I'm actually really curious about you guys' input. Thank you for your time today. I know this was kind of a long one, and I hope you have a nice rest of the week.